Now let's move on to Art Talks, and our featured artist this week is Edo Murtić, who creates emotionally packed pieces of art in the style of what's called lyrical abstraction. So this modernist painting style first appeared actually in the mid-1960s. It was characterized by pieces which feature both physical and sensory experiences. I think the only way to understand that is actually, Sarah's going to explain that to us as she takes us through his art. The lyrical abstraction movement really created a whole new dimension in art. So let's hand it off to Sarah and tell us more about this really fascinating art style, which I have never heard of before.
Good morning, everyone. So here we go. So Edo Murtić, or I'm not exactly sure on the pronunciation. My Croatian is not up to date, but he was a painter from Croatia, best known for this lyrical abstraction and this abstract expressionism style. He worked in a variety of media, including oil painting, gouache, graphic design, mosaics, lithographs, and we'll look at a few of those. He was born in May of 1921 in a town called Bjelovar in central Croatia. And early in his childhood, his family moved to Zagreb, the capital of Croatia. He went to craft school and studied under multiple teachers and had his first exhibit at the Royal High School in 1935. He then went to study at the Academy of Fine Arts in Zagreb and graduated in 1941. Murtić was strongly influenced by socialist ideas, and at the outbreak of World War II, he became involved in the anti-fascist movement. In 1944, Murtić joined the Liberation Forces, where he worked designing graphics, posters, and books. And in the years following the war, he began to travel and exhibit extensively. In 1951, he spent time in the US and Canada, where he encountered the abstract expressionism movement, which really influenced him greatly. Now, if we think back to expressionism, the first artist that comes to mind is Van Gogh. With his bright colors, whimsical brushstrokes, we've talked about him in a previous art talk, and it meant more about how the artist was feeling rather than the realistic colors. So when we think about Van Gogh's paintings, for example, irises or his sunflowers, they were recognizable as those flowers. They were just maybe in colors that were slightly unrealistic, or the way he did the brushstrokes was a little bit different. So abstract expressionism really branches off that idea and uses abstract representations to express what the artist was feeling. So this piece was made earlier in his career. The English name for this is Fish Houses. And as you can see, it was made before he found his signature abstract style. This is a very recognizable scene of the houses and the people sitting on the steps. And this was actually recently sold by the Skinner Gallery in Boston for $7,703. So here we can see Murtić's style becoming slightly more abstract. A year before this piece was made in 1958, he participated in the world's three largest contemporary art events, the Venice Biennale, the Carnegie Prize in Pittsburgh, and the Documenta in Germany. So by this point, he was very much an established artist. And the English title of this piece means morning ceremony. But as I mentioned before, the artist was becoming increasingly abstract. So this piece was again a lithograph made in 1959, and its title means stability. And as opposed to the first piece, Fish Houses, that we looked at, we can see Murtić beginning to play more with color. The overall piece is slightly purplish blue with black, brown, and olive green mixed throughout. And the colors are contrasting, but they're still more subdued hues than, say, a bright blue for the background or a bright green instead of the olive green that he uses. So we can see little by little his colors getting more vibrant. This piece is again a lithograph, and the English name is called Saturation. So it makes sense that his use of color is getting more and more saturated. And this is kind of a study of reds. It goes both warmer into the pinks, and then you've got the cooler side of red that kind of transitions into that purple. And as I mentioned, Murtić is an abstract expressionist, and he became influenced by this movement after World War II on his trip to Canada and the US. And he met many popular artists, one of which being Mark Rothko, another abstract expressionist who we've talked about before. And this piece with the color blocks really resembles some of Rothko's works. This piece is not titled, but again, his use of color really starts to pop. This is gouache, which is like a water-based paint where the pigments are dissolved in water and then mixed with kind of a glue-like substance. But you can see there's an opaqueness to the paint, which allows for the viewer to see some of the lines painted underneath each other. Like we can see the yellow and the blue lines mixing slightly on the paper to create kind of a greenish hue in some spots. And what I love about this piece is that it's so abstract that you can really let your imagination run wild. It's kind of this lyrical abstraction. It's almost like gazing at the clouds as a kid, right? So this part right here to me almost looks like an airplane. And these kind of red and yellow things up top, they kind of look like bug antennae. So it's really just fun to make your own story about the piece. And that's kind of the expressionism aspect to it. Senza titolo. So this piece is titled Without Title in Italian. So it's interesting that Murtić gave it a title specifically to say that it has no title. This piece has a dark background and uses a lot of kind of black and gray throughout, which makes the very bright, almost neon colors of green, yellow, and orange pop even more on the canvas. This piece, in my opinion, also has kind of a graffiti-esque aspect to it and has artistic similarities to Willem de Kooning, who was another abstract expressionism at the time. Again, the name of this piece is another way to say without title, this time in German. And he really left the meaning behind his paintings up to the viewers. There's not a ton of detail or story behind a lot of the pieces. I wish, I could tell you exactly what this piece is supposed to represent or symbolize, but I guess that kind of makes it more fun for us to make up our own story and our own meaning. Again, we have Un titel, but of course the two pieces are quite different. This one uses a very dark palette throughout with the bright green and yellow kind of coming through, but it takes on more shape than the previous piece. It kind of looks like a mountain or rock formation. And within that mountain, he uses these smaller brushstrokes to add texture. And finally, we end on The Birth of Yellow. I love the title he gave this piece because he could have called it Black and Yellow or something like that. But by saying birth, it really makes us look at the piece in a different way, as if this kind of ball of black, white, and blue create this bright yellow that just explodes out of it and drips down the canvas. So Murtić became a member of the Croatian Academy of Arts and Sciences, as well as the Croatian Helsinki Community for Human Rights. He's one of the leading contemporary artists of the socialist world and created the Murtić Foundation to ensure that his art will be available for future generations. He donated many of his pieces to the Museum of Contemporary Art in Zagreb, and actually a street right outside the museum is named after him. Thanks, everyone.
Wow, that was, Sarah, that was really fascinating art pieces, isn't it? Which one would you say was your favorite?
I love The Birth of Yellow, the last one I showed. I just think it's so, the way that he named it, I just think is really poignant.
That was my favorite as well. And what I saw when it popped up was a bird's nest, so birth,
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of what the image inspired in me.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much, Sarah, as always. Fascinating art talk and an interesting artist that many of us probably have not heard of before. So thank you for taking us through his work.
I thought the evolution of his art was very interesting.
It was, yeah, it was.